Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started if you guys want to grab a seat. Thanks so much for being here. My name's Tim Coster. I'm the Commercial Lines Chief Growth Officer at BHS Insurance. Fancy title for I get to keep track of all of our insurance agents that you guys work with, make sure they're doing their jobs. But we're really excited to have everyone here. We've got a full house, close to 200, and then we've got some folks joining us virtually. We're also recording this, so if you've got other team members who would like to review this material, you'll be able to do so in the future. But this is our Fall Safety and Risk Management Symposium. We put a lot of effort into these events. We're trying to bring hot topics in the industry that we see you all face on a daily basis, different challenges as you run your businesses from a compliance and risk management perspective. So we've got some great industry leaders with us today, from risk management, safety, HR, to speak on these topics. We hope this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to ask questions, provide your feedback, your input. We think as a group effort, this will make this a more valuable experience for everyone. Our first topic today, we're focusing on employee onboarding. Right? I got that right? Didn't get that out of order? Perfect. And we've got, again, a few industry experts with us today. We've got Lisa Cooper, who's the founder of Cooper People Group. We've got Heather Chapman, who's also the founder of Paradigm Safety, and then Zach McCulloch from BHS Insurance. So without further ado, we will jump into our first topic, and we're going to start with Lisa Cooper. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Let's see, everybody hear me okay in the back? Good morning, nice to see you all. I'm Lisa Cooper. Again, I own Cooper People Group. I started the business by accident 4.5 years ago, although I'm not new to the world of human resources. We provide fractional HR services and support to organizations that have no HR. HR's in transition, HR's just buried and needs an extra set of hands for a reason or a season. So we're delighted to be here with you today. I'd like to start by telling you a little story. Imagine this, it's your first day on the job. You walk into the office, except when you get there, it's dark and the door doesn't open. You wait around for a few minutes and you text the hiring manager, who actually happens not to be there because he's on a plane somewhere else. You wait a little while longer and finally the CEO comes and opens up the door and says, "Oh, it's so nice to see you. We're really glad to have you. I didn't know you were starting today." They welcome you into the office and they show you your office and they flick on the lights and a cloud of dust exudes from the desk. There's some cobwebs in the corner and there's a stack of paper a mile high. There's no keys to the office. There's no computer. There's no name tag. You like to use the restroom, but that's under lock and key and you have no security badge to get beyond that door. Finally, someone in HR pops in and says, "Hello. I didn't know you were starting today either, but you can join our new hire onboarding and orientation starting in about an hour in the break room." So you go there and you spend the next 4 hours filling out paperwork, tax forms, I-9s, and all of the other lovely joy that first days often bring. The afternoon is spent reading the beloved employee handbook. And don't get me wrong, I love a good handbook. We write a lot of them. And then the CEO walks by your office at the end of the day and says, "How was your first day?" What do you think that person might have said? Well, I'll tell you, that person was me, and I said, "Coming here was the worst career move I ever made. I don't think I signed up for the right thing." So today we're going to have a conversation about how to prevent that from happening to one of your people. Now, onboarding, there's a million ways to do it well. There's 1,000 ways to do it wrong. My goal for you today is share some of the tips and tricks that we've learned over the course of serving several hundred clients in this community and doing HR for decades and decades. And hopefully you get some confirmation and affirmation that you're doing a lot of the right things and maybe a couple fresh ideas of things, that's worth exploring. Because I believe that onboarding and orientation isn't a one-size-fits-all. You're never done. It requires constant evolution in order to make sure that you're creating a welcoming, inclusive place where your people can thrive as soon as possible. All right, let's get into it. Great onboarding can help improve employee retention by how much? What say you? A, B's, raise your hand. C's? D's. No D's are raising their hand. 82%. Employees with good onboarding experiences are 18 times more likely to be committed to their employer. People are making decisions about whether or not coming to our organizations have been a good career move or bad within a few short days. We have a very short period of time in order to confirm for them that they made the right move. So let's talk about 4 C's of onboarding. This is pretty simple stuff, right? A lot of you are probably doing already many of these things. The first thing that we need to make sure of is that we're tackling is compliance, right? Of course, we need an I-9, right? We have ICE kind of hanging around, right? We need to make sure that folks are doing the I-9. We need tax forms. We need payroll direct deposit information, right? We got to make sure they sign off on our NDAs or whatever sort of things that we have in our organizations, right? Our employment policies, making sure that everybody understands what the standards are, what they'll be held accountable for. Inadvertently, we don't want somebody to violate a key company policy because they simply didn't know, because we didn't share that with them. The second C of effective onboarding is clarity. So this is your roles and responsibilities. One of the things that we like to use here is, of course, a job description, but an accountability chart. Anybody ever heard of an accountability chart? So yeah, we got some folks probably running on EOS here in the room. An accountability chart is sort of an org chart on steroids, and what that does is it usually doesn't have titles. It doesn't really have names. What it does is it lists 5, 6 key roles and responsibilities. So I know first and foremost what I am accountable for, what I own. And I also understand who owns what other things in our organization, right? So if I've got a question on how to do my expense report, I know expenses, that's the finance guy. That's where I need to go for that. Having clarity about how performance will be measured. I'm a big fan of hey, I'm gonna show you pretty early on, this is your performance review. This is the things by which you'll be measured, right? We measure here, maybe it's core values or KPIs or core competencies or all of the above, right? Showing people what's that ruler, what's that measuring stick? I like to walk through that job description line by line. And I don't just say you will do the TPS report. I say, the TPS report is found here, and then on Fridays, we send it to this person, and let me show you how to do that, right? So I'm kind of walking through with some degree of detail. The third C is culture, and this one is so very important, because if you ask most of us in this room, why do we stay in the roles that we have? The people, right? The culture. I love my team. Those are the things that I hear all the time from my clients. These are the values, the tradition, the sacred cows, if you will, right? The things that are the norms for the organization, even the history and the future, right? Here's how we started. We were a bootstrapping startup. That was me. And now, we're a few years along on our journey, and here's what we're excited about for the future. These are the things that we do every week, every month, every quarter, every year, those big events. These are the awards and the recognition that we have. Don't underestimate. Those things are really meaningful for people. It's hard to be the last guy in and the one who doesn't know anything, so don't forget about the cultural elements of onboarding as well. Finally, connection. This is really where the rubber meets the road too. Again, this is where we have meaningful contributions and conversations with other individuals. We might have a mentor program, a mentor matchup program. We might need to be introduced to key vendors that have really play an important role, key customers, right? Even thinking about how we communicate internally, are we doing Slack? Are we doing text? Are we mostly email? Is it water cooler talk? How do those cultural communication pieces come into play? So when you think about your onboarding program, make sure it's covering each one of these 4 key components. Okay, now we got 5 steps. It's really pretty simple. And you'll notice that the term that I'm not using is orientation, because orientation to me is really a very narrow window of time. I always say day 1 is kind of like orientation, but onboarding takes a long time. It's not a one and done. It's not oh, I gave them orientation and off they go and they're gonna immediately be performing at the highest caliber, right? Onboarding is really an experience and it takes some time. And it begins right here with pre-boarding. And then we talk about onboarding or orientation. We talk a little bit more about the cultural integration, and then training and really helping them to build skill and competence in their role. And then, of course, a key component is the coaching and feedback. So let's break these down. Like I said, this isn't just a one and done organization. Many of us, we say, okay, well, onboarding, HR owns that, or the office manager owns that. And, it takes place and maybe, we send an offer letter and then day 1, they give them their keys, they get their tax forms and they pat them on the butt and off they go, right? That's not what we're talking about here, because this should involve many, many different departments, from your hiring manager to your payroll department to your facilities and safety folks, your hiring teams, your operations teams, the whole leadership team. And again, this isn't just day one or day two. This can take several weeks, several months to fully integrate somebody into our culture. So let's start with step one, pre-boarding. This is really about building excitement. Again, the goal here is to make sure that that person, when they walk out at the end of Friday on their first week, they go, oh my gosh, I just joined the best company ever. I'm gonna be here forever. I love these people. I love what we do. My job is awesome, right? That's the kind of feeling we want those folks to have in front of them. So some of the things to think about: if you don't have a great onboarding chassis, right, a tech platform that's sending offer letters, collecting job descriptions, getting those tax forms, there's really low cost, efficient things that probably your payroll software can do, or other softwares as well. Make sure you're utilizing that tech. It makes for a better onboarding experience, and then you're spending less time doing paperwork and people calling their spouse going, what's your social security number again, right? We've all been there, right? Those platforms can host schedules, right? Other resources, you got one sort of dynamic place. I won't run through all of these, but you've got them here on the screen. Feel free to take a picture, and I think they're gonna send the slides out later. I love a digital welcome kit, right? Sometimes I even like sending a pre-hire welcome note to the employee's home, even maybe to their family, to say, hey, thanks for sharing some of your mom's time with us. We're really excited to have her on the team. What a nice little touch, right? Sending swag, right? Even if it's just a coffee cup or a sweatshirt or a hat, a pen, whatever the thing is, sometimes those little touches make all the difference in the world and gets them really, really jazzed for day one. Making sure our managers know what's expected, right? Sometimes they're like, okay, well, the HR will take care of it. No. Managers, those frontline managers are the ones who really can make or break that first experience for your new hire. So making sure they know what's expected, what HR is gonna do, what that day looks like. And I love to plot out at least the first week of an agenda. Like at 8 o'clock, you're gonna meet with so-and-so. At 2 o'clock, you're gonna take the tour. At 3 o'clock, we're gonna introduce you to this key meet, making sure we've really thought very strategically about their experience and how we're gonna get all the things done. All right. I always like this slide because it feels like we're going to be drinking from a fire hose all the time, or garden hose. And we don't want that to be like that, right? But this is a great opportunity for first impressions. I always told my hiring managers, if you're not there on their first day, they aren't either, right? Welcoming a new employee to your team is one of the #1 responsibilities that every leader has. So I like to encourage those managers, if you can't be there, that's okay. They'll be ready to start when you get back to the office, right? It's important that we greet them immediately, not like have the door locked, which is what my experience was. Again, handwritten thank you note goes a long way, or a little plaque. I started a job once, and they actually had a little placard at the front door. I've seen it before where somebody puts on the marquee out front, right? Like those little meaningful moments. Obviously, if you're hiring like a class of 20 people all at one time, that's probably not feasible. But maybe you say, hey, welcome class of September new hires. And that's a really great way to make them feel special. Of course, tours and introductions, that's always a part of day one. I always like to do a day in the life right here. Let them know, like, what's the normal cadence of operations, right? Is there an all-hands call every, a daily huddle, whatever that happens to be? And I also think that this is a really important opportunity for other leaders to get in, right? Like, if maybe I need the finance guy to come in and talk to us a little bit about, how we generate revenue and what some of our largest expenses, give people a broad-based understanding about how the organization really functions is key. Scavenger hunt, go find this on our wiki or our intranet site, right? Or I remember when I worked in a restaurant, they told me, go find the left-handed bacon flipper. I was like 17. And man, I looked high and low for that left-handed bacon flipper before I realized it was just a big cruel joke, right? But you know what? It's been 30 years and I still tell that story. So it really made an impact on me, right? Don't underestimate the importance of giving something menial in that first day or two. Meaningful, not menial. To clarify, right? Give them something that they can really go, yeah, that's what they hired me for, right? It's not just about coffees and donuts and meet and greets and tours and things like that. Give me something to sink my teeth into. Give me something meaningful so I go, okay, yeah, my skills are really going to be used here. Again, the cultural integration, there's 1,000 ways to do this. You're probably doing some of these things already in your own teams. One of the things I really like to do is do a working with Lisa guide, because working with me is sometimes, well, Catherine here will tell you, it can be a lot, right? And so, understanding, I really like it when people get to me before I get to them. Or understanding, I had a CEO client one day who was like, I hate PowerPoints. Please, if you do nothing, do never give me a PowerPoint. I just want to have a conversation. Okay, that would be helpful for me to know as a new hire, so I don't commit one of those, cardinal sins, right? That makes it really hard for me to recover from. So think about that. If you're a hiring manager, right, think about what is it that you like? How do you like people to work with you? And then ask your employee to do the same thing. You're going to have a much better time getting on the same page and communicating effectively together if you kind of clear the air about what your work style is like. And there's great tools to help with that. At CPG, we use a tool called the Predictive Index. It helps me understand my team and how they're naturally wired, what really drives them, and therefore that's really indicative of how their behaviors and their actions show up day in day. I go, oh, she's not responding to me because she doesn't want to respond. She's just one of those people who needs more processing time. She doesn't talk to think like I do, and I get that about her, so I need to just give her a few hours to process what I just shared, right? Really helps to unpack those things. So there's a lot of great tools out there in the marketplace that may be helpful for you to understand how people are going to show up and how you might flex your style to accommodate how they really like to receive information as well. Buddy systems, making sure they're clear on a regular meeting cadence. Like, when are we having one-on-ones? When are we having a team meeting? Do we have an all hands? What do we do? Do we have like a quarterly all team get together, or we do, philanthropy together, or a wellness activity together? Thinking very strategically about all of these items can give people like really some fun things to look forward to. Cultural anchors, making sure they understand. Like at Cooper People Group, we have a thread. We call it Winning Wednesday. We share our personal best, our professional best. We're a completely virtual workforce, and so it's a great way for us to bond and connect. And we share pictures of our dogs and our kids dressed up for Halloween, and us at clients. And Catherine's probably going to post a picture later today of me standing up here doing the thing, right? So making sure you're finding those opportunities to clarify. Great ways to connect as well using technology. All right, so training, lots of ideas here. And this is going to be different for everybody, because I'm working on the production floor, or I'm a sales, consultant working on the phone, right? How you train your people is going to be a little bit different. Every adult learner needs something a little bit different. So you're probably going to utilize maybe some reading. Maybe I'm going to show you, that I'm going to watch you, and then I'm going to let you go on it, right? Maybe you're going to do some online learning. You have a learning management system, or LMS, where you can take some online learning. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do here, but thinking about your learner and how they prefer to receive information first will allow you to use that multi-prong approach, right? And it's probably going to not be like, I trained you once, I showed you how to do it once, don't you got it? No, you gotta say it 7 times for me to really, really get it, and you gotta let me try it, whether it's, work with my hands or, something like that. It's going to be important. I really like to show individuals too, like, 90 days from now, here's what I'm hoping you'll be able to do. And we kind of co-create this dashboard. We say, okay, well, you've done this before. What kind of training do you think we're going to need to provide for you to be able to close the gap for that last 30%, which you haven't done before? Okay, well, I'd like to do a ride-along with you. Okay, great. Well, let's book 3 ride-alongs, and the last one, we'll have it be where you kind of take the lead and I just watch you, right? So you're kind of co-creating that roadmap, and they know exactly what's going to be expected of them by, say, days 30, 60, 90, et cetera. The final and often overlooked step is coaching and mentoring. What gets measured gets done, what gets monitored gets done. And so it's really, really important. Sometimes we give a lot of grace for individuals who are just coming into our organization, and they're like, well, we're new, they're new. But do we ever take time to really deliver that feedback? Even if it's like that was awesome, do more of that. Here's why I think that worked for you. What do you think worked for you about that? I like to catch them doing it right. I also like to catch it early if they're doing it wrong, because they don't know. Like, no one wakes up in the morning and says, I'm gonna go to work today and do a really crappy job. We don't do that, right? We're humans. We want to do a good job. We want to be told when we're done, when we've done something right. So having a regular consistent method of check-ins for sure by the end of every week as they're getting started, and then maybe you have monthlies or you have bi-weekly. You'll have a cadence for your own individual folks. I like to also reflect back on how was your hiring experience? How was your onboarding experience? Are you getting what you need, right? It's not just are we making sure that they're growing and evolving, but are they getting what they need from us? Are our managers showing up? Are those team leads or mentors showing up in the way that they need to as well? Okay, lots of things to talk about there. I do love this quote from Claire Hughes Johnson that says, most business problems are really just the result of an uncomfortable conversation that didn't happen. Be okay with the yuck. Be okay with the uncomfortable conversation. I can't tell you how many times my phone rings that says, Lisa, Bob's gotta go. We got to get rid of Bob. And I go, okay, well, what kind of conversations you had with Bob? We don't really, there's probably some missed opportunities there. I mean, he should know, right? And I'm like, but really, does he? And he probably doesn't. And then there's totally caught off guard. And had he known, he probably would have said, thanks for letting me know. I will address that. It's good to know, right? So make sure you're comfortable having the yuck conversation. And if you need help with that, Catherine's really good at that. We'd be happy to help you. So as I close out my conversation and turn the mic over to my colleagues here, I'd like you to just take a minute. As I shared some best practices and maybe some innovative tools and things like that today, what are one or two things you would like to bring back to the farm, bring back to your office, bring back to your shop, to make an employee's day great? Maybe I'll give you a minute, talk about it with your teams as we get transitioned here. Because I'd love to hear from you if you're also doing something that I didn't list here, right? So maybe share what you're doing or something that you think really resonated with you. So you walk out of here with something that's actionable. I'm going to go ahead and keep moving, but I do want you to have that conversation as we transition, right? Closing thoughts here. Onboarding is always about people. Don't forget to put the people first. A lot of times we put the process first and we forget about the people component. These are people with emotions and feelings and families, right? We need to show some care and empathy and concern for our folks because starting a new job, it's horrifying. Do you remember your first day in your job? You're nervous, right? Like, let's put the people first. It's not a checklist, right? It's helping them find their path. It's not just about them learning us, it's about us learning them and meeting them where they're at and giving them the tools and resources to be successful as soon as possible, helping them to get fully competent in their role and to be a high peak performer at their convenience. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and pass it along, let you guys have a quick minute or so conversation about any tools that you heard today that were helpful, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleagues. Thank you very much for your time today. Feel free to see Catherine and I after class. We'd be happy to share some tools with you. Thank you. I'm all rowdy.
We got to keep moving. Good morning, everyone. I'm Heather Chapman. I founded Paradigm Safety in 2018. I am a safety consultant here in Grand Rapids, and I originally started Paradigm Safety to help a local organization revamp their entire safety program. When they brought me on board to help them, I could immediately tell that their safety policies were like copy and pasted from J.J. Keller. So if you've done that, I'm here to tell you we need to completely revamp that. But I worked with them over the course of 3 years to completely redo how they approach safety. And that's one of the things I do at Paradigm Safety, is I really help people shift their safety paradigm, right? The way you think about safety. So let me start with a question. Does anybody in the room have chickens? What? Yes. Yes. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you, people that have chickens, we are next level crazy. So when COVID hit and everybody was out getting puppies, I came home with chickens. Okay, and this was one of those scenarios where I randomly showed up at a farm store, which I haven't been to since I was a teenager, and I saw baby chickens. And if you've seen them, they're so cute, right? So I texted my husband, and I just sent a picture, and I was like, this is happening, ... And he didn't respond, and so I waited 5 minutes, and I'm like, no response equals yes. And he was like, I am not helping you with these. And I took the leap. I'm like, I bet you will. So I came home with chickens. I had some learning curves, and guess what? Like a year later, one of my chickens got sick. And you know what? There's not a vet in this area, or even within 2 hours, that will treat backyard chickens. They only treat big poultry farms. So I had to learn how to take care of my chickens. So now I'm a pseudo chicken vet. I have done so many things I never even thought would be possible. But I had to figure out how to treat my chicken, how to diagnose, and then, does anybody know the size of an 18-gauge needle? Okay, that thing is monstrous. But what I had to do was insert a needle into this chicken's belly to withdraw fluid. Okay, first I read about that, and I was like, oh, no way. I don't know that I can do this. Or if I do it, I'm probably gonna kill this chicken, and that's gonna be really traumatic. So reading for me was not enough. Then I watched a couple of videos, because there's lots of people like us backyard chicken farmers that have their own chickens, and they post videos about, hey, how do you do this? And this is the process you take. Well, I watched a couple of videos, and I was like, okay, I feel a little better about this. My final step was, I finally found a vet in Texas that would treat my backyard chicken. So my chicken had a Zoom call with a vet, and I'm not kidding, I have a picture, I should have put it in here. We had a little Zoom call, and we walked through the process together. How do I do this? What steps do I take? Oh, there's some vital organs right there. Okay, good to know. It took several iterations for me, training, to figure out how to do this and actually be comfortable and confident in that. So point is, everybody learns differently, and if you have, let's say, an LMS where your people are learning on a computer screen, that might not be enough for them. And when we're talking about safety, just reading about how do I evacuate my facility, probably not enough. Show them. So when you're bringing somebody on board, Lisa talked about culture, really important. If you're asking your people to sit in front of a computer screen to read about how do I evacuate the facility, where are fire extinguishers, what's the expectation, somebody actually needs to go show them. When you bring them on board, turn this into a game. It's a scavenger hunt. Lisa mentioned a scavenger hunt as well. You can have them do a scavenger hunt to find where egress points are. Once I evacuate the building, where am I supposed to go? Where are the fire extinguishers? Where's the shelter in place? There's actually a company out there now that creates QR codes, and it's totally gamified. You take your phone out there, and you have to go find all of your evacuation points, all of the fire extinguishers. Every single time you find it, there's a QR code there. You scan the QR code. This is part of your onboarding process. You have to find all of these points. That company, the name is LOCI, if you want to look at it and see what they do. But it's really fun. It's a fun way to get people onboarded, and you can do that for all sorts of different points of your safety onboarding process, not just evacuation. The other thing is, I really hope your facility has a map like this. Okay, if you don't, it's time to do that. We need to tell people how to get out of the building if there's a fire, if there's a tornado or severe weather, where are we supposed to go within the building to keep ourselves safe? Where are fire extinguishers? Where are bathrooms? How do I access this thing? you need to be able to show your employees where these things are located. Now, that company I mentioned that I started working with in 2018, one of the things that we did was each department had a team member that would kind of be like the lead, the safety lead. And as we did the facility tour, we actually created a walking tour for new hires. Each safety lead from each department would come forward and introduce themselves so that the employee would have at least one point of reference in each department. So if they had a question or they got lost, at least they'd have one familiar face in every single department. So good way just to help new hires get connected with different groups within your facility. Another thing that we did, I actually helped a very large organization do this. New hires actually wore a different color shirt or a vest. Now, if you have the right culture, that's amazing because now all of your employees see that, oh, the guy in the yellow shirt, he's new. If you have the right culture, then your employees are welcoming and open, and they go approach these new hires and let them feel welcome and included. Now, if you don't have the right culture, you might be really putting a thumb on those new hires. But having a different color shirt, especially in a very huge facility, is really helpful for other people to understand, hey, this is a new guy. Maybe we should check in with him. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the stuff that could kill you, sticky. These things are super important. So as part of your onboarding, your employees need to understand any of these types of hazards that you may have and what their role is with those hazards, okay? Are they going to operate fork trucks? Do you have cranes in your facility with overhead loads? Do you have high energy sources? Is your new person going to be doing any sort of lockout? Are they going to be accessing panels? Do you have high heat situations? These are the things that if done incorrectly or not really fully educating your new hires, this can kill them. There's really no second chances with these. So first of all, it's very important that if you have these hazards, you've assessed them and you've put in controls to make sure people stay safe. If you haven't done that, give me a call, but you need to address these. And then when you bring people on board, please make sure that you're pointing these things out to them and letting them know how they protect themselves. So we'll dive into a few of these. Fork trucks. Struck by accidents are always in the top 4 killers in workplace injuries, okay? So if you get hit by a fork truck, it's gonna be a bad day. You are gonna be seriously injured and or killed. So if your people are operating fork trucks, it's very important that you have a strong training program for your drivers and that the people that aren't drivers fully understand where they're supposed to walk in the facility and rules about fork trucks. You do not approach a fork truck driver. You need to keep your distance and be clear. If they're gonna operate a fork truck, I don't care if they're coming to you with a license from another company. They still need to go through your training. It is your responsibility to train them and license them on your specific fork trucks or your aerial lifts. If they need to operate, they need to go through your training before they get the opportunity to operate your trucks. And then what kind of powered industrial trucks do you have? If you're in flammable or explosive atmospheres, you gotta have a specially rated truck. Make sure your people know that so that they don't inadvertently introduce a hazard into your workplace. If you have gas, does anybody have gas fork trucks? Okay, carbon monoxide can be an issue. A company I worked with had a handful of gas-powered fork trucks. We actually had some pretty significant issues with carbon monoxide, and we had to do some repairs and replacements of fork trucks, but also change the ventilation in the facility. Carbon monoxide is a killer. So if you have gas trucks, it may make sense to do some carbon monoxide testing at some point. Pedestrian safety. Do you have walkways? Do you have designated walkways? If you do, that's amazing. Show your people where they're supposed to walk. If you don't, if there's some unmarked path that they should be taking, let them know that and actually show them. Walk the facility with them. Let them know where they're supposed to go. And be clear, they have to stop at intersections. And even if you're in a warehouse and you're walking down the path, Fork trucks can't always see you, especially if it's a little bit dark. You need to be cautious when you're going past racks and around corners. Those are blind spots, and you can be struck by a fork truck. So making sure people understand the routes that they're supposed to take is important. Lockout, tagout. Lots of different energy sources when we're talking about having to lock out machinery or equipment. If your employees are going to be authorized, those that are authorized to do lockout, tagout, they need to have a pretty intense onboarding process for lockout. They need to understand the energy sources that you're dealing with. They need to understand the equipment that they're going to lock out, and they need to know your process for performing lockout, tagout. If you are onboarding an employee that will not do lockout, they need to understand they're not authorized to apply a lock, and if they see that lock and tag, they may not touch that. They may not try to turn on the machine. You need to let them know that somebody's life is literally on the line if we see the lock and the tag on a machine. So simply having an employee that's going to be doing lockout read a lockout PowerPoint, first of all, that's kind of boring, but second of all, that's not enough. You have to provide them some hands-on training at the equipment. You need to make sure that they're fully competent to be able to perform a lockout before you give them the keys. Confined spaces. Do you have these at your facility? If you do, what are the hazards in the confined space? Is it a confined space or is it a permit-required confined space? So hopefully you've done the assessment so that you know what the hazards are and you have a permit process in place. But if you're bringing somebody on board and they're not going to enter confined space, you still need to let them know what the confined spaces are and that they may not enter. Your confined spaces should be marked do not enter. You need to let them know what the hazards are and that their role is to not enter. If you're training somebody, bringing them on board, and they are going to have to do confined space entry, well, guess what? Now you just signed yourself up for a really intensive training. Because again, having them read a PowerPoint or LMS for confined space, not enough. They need some hands-on. If they have to do gas detection, you need to do hands-on with that gas detector. You need to practice entry. What happens if somebody passes out or gets injured or goes unconscious inside of the confined space? How do you rescue them? That should be part of your training as well. So if you're going to have people entering permit required or confined spaces, you need to have a pretty intense training program for them. Work at height, #1 killer in the state of Michigan. Every single year for the past several years. If you have people working at height, you need to have a really robust fall protection program. And that could include things from having guardrails in place on your mezzanines or on your rooftops, or it might mean that you're using fall harnesses. Whatever it looks like for you, you need to train your employees who are working at height how to protect themselves, when they might have to work at height, and what's the process. Do you have a permit process for people working at height? If you do, train your employees on what that process looks like and who they're supposed to go to get permission to work at height. Do you have a risk assessment? Do you have a rescue plan? All of these things need to be part of your onboarding. If your other employees are not going to be working at height, they still need to understand, hey, you're not allowed to build scaffolding, or you're not allowed to climb this fixed ladder. You need to let them know their responsibilities and expectations regarding work at height. If it turns out that they may need to shift into a role where they have to use a fall harness, guess what? Training. They may not be able to do any activities that are requiring them to work over 4 feet in height if they have not been trained. And that training does include, how do I put on a fall harness? How do I inspect that fall harness? Okay? Giving them really good information around how to protect themselves over 4 feet is very important. Job safety analysis. So, this JSA, job safety analysis, is really important for you to protect yourself and your business. Any work and tasks that you have should have a JSA. We could potentially include our PPE assessments in a JSA, because oftentimes when we break down the steps of a task and we say, here's the hazard, here's how we're controlling the hazard, one of the things that often is part of the control measure is wearing personal protective equipment. So, have JSAs in place. Whatever tasks or work that this new hire is going to be doing, share that JSA with them. You don't need to review every single JSA. That's boring and not applicable to them. But for their job, any task that they're going to be doing, share the JSA with them so that they understand the hazards, the potential risk, and how they protect themselves. Now, you can use old school Excel sheets for your JSAs. Totally fine. What you see on the screen here is a partnership between National Safety Council and a company called Comp Science. They've created an app. So if you just search that Safe Work Plan Comp Science, you can actually just upload 2 or 3 pictures of your high hazard work, and this thing will create a JSA for you, like literally in seconds. It's really, really cool. This is only for high hazard work, so don't upload pictures of somebody lifting a box. But somebody working on a ladder, somebody doing lockout tagout, absolutely. 2 or 3 pictures, drop it in, push the green arrow, and this will create a safe work plan for you. Super slick. So, my final piece here, where we can't control hazards through engineering controls or eliminating hazards, and our people are gonna have to get exposed, we may need to have personal protective equipment. If your employees are going to be wearing PPE, or if you have certain zones within your facility where you have to wear PPE, first, show your new hires where those zones are at so that they understand, hey, when I go through this door, I need hearing protection and safety glasses. Show them so they know. How do they get access to their PPE? Do you have vending machines? Do you have to go see a purchasing manager? Do you go to your department lead? How do I get my PPE? And then provide it to them on day one. Don't make them go hunt for it. Give them what they need, and if you can, make it really cool. Nobody wants those $1 safety glasses that you scratch immediately and then throw away. If you can get them onboarded with something really cool, that sets a good tone for them. There's so many great safety glasses out there now. If you can give your new hires some really cool safety glasses, that's kind of fun, and that's a nice way for them to get onboarded into your program. If you have visitors to your facility, what PPE do they need? Do they have to wear PPE? I will tell you one of the biggest ways to erode your safety culture is to tell all of your employees they have to wear PPE, but then you parade visitors and contractors through your facility and they don't wear PPE. Okay? Set the tone, and it applies to every single person. Okay? I'm going to turn it over to Zach to finish out here on safety.
All right, good morning, everyone. So as Tim said, my name is Zach McCulick. I am part of the risk management team here at BHS, and I'm going to finish up new hire onboarding for safety. So if you want to go back to the slides. Is your employee going to be using hand or portable power tools? If your employee is going to be using power tools, show them examples of tools that they are not allowed to have in the workplace. If I'm a forklift driver and I'm going to be cutting open boxes for part of my job, do you think I should be doing it with a razor blade with a tape handle? Probably not. Show them unacceptable tools that are not allowed here. If I'm going to be using a grinder or something with a power cord, show them that they must inspect these tools every day to make sure that the grounding prong's in place, the power cord's in good condition, and that sort of thing. So I only have a few minutes, so I'm going to kind of fly through these slides, but we're available for questions afterwards, and we'll have all of our contact information up there if you want to reach out to any of us individually to ask those more questions. All right, if I'm a new hire at an organization and there's a fire, is it my job to put out this fire? Is only maintenance people allowed to put out this fire? Where are the fire extinguishers located? I know Heather talked about it's very important to maybe even do a scavenger hunt for where the fire extinguishers are located. But what fires are we going to put out and what are we going to evacuate for? If there's a small contained fire like this video, this is something we can put out. But if we have a paint kitchen and then one barrel's catching on fire, now the next barrel of paint's catching on fire, and so on, that's probably an area where we want to evacuate. So now I just put out a fire. What do I do with this fire extinguisher? Do I just hang it back on the wall? Do I go bring it to HR? Do I bring it to my manager? Do I bring it to maintenance? These are all things you should discuss during that employee's first couple of days while onboarding. And then chemical safety. Any single chemical you have on site, you need to have an SDS sheet or a safety data sheet. So this is required by OSHA. Your hand sanitizers, your oils, your resins, make sure you go through your chemical inventory and have a safety data sheet for every single thing that you have on site. OSHA has this law called the Employees' Right to Know law. So you as the employers need to provide access to these safety data sheets to these employees, as well as provide chemical safety training to, if I'm a painter, I need to be trained on the paints that I'm using. I need to be trained on the hazards associated with those things. And then the employee needs to follow those established safety procedures with those chemicals, and then also report any spills or accidents. If there's a bottle of hand sanitizer, they're not taking it and drinking it, but using it how it's meant to be used. So this globally harmonized system should be talked about in your new hire onboarding. These are the pictograms. There's 9 of them, and you can see what they each stand for. But if you see these pictures on a chemical, these employees should know what these are. So the flame is flammable, but maybe the one at the very bottom, the health hazard, is not so intuitive. You don't know by looking at this what this actually means. But this means it can affect something inside of your body. So maybe it's a carcinogen. Maybe it's going to affect your lungs, your liver, your heart, whatever it may be. Explain these to the employees. You can see the one with the skull and crossbones. This could kill you. So if you're working with a chemical with this pictogram on it, employees should know these hazards. I know we don't like talking about COVID, but during COVID times, I would buy a big drum, a 55-gallon drum of hand sanitizer. It lasts me about 3 months. And then I had 12 cleaning stations throughout my facility, and I would basically fill up spray bottles with this hand sanitizer and put them at all of the different stations. But you make sure that the label on the drum is the same exact label that's on your spray bottle when you put it at these cleaning stations. So we know what's there. We know the hazards associated. We know the precautionary statements. So this is something to think about. I go to many different companies all the time, and I see lots of spray bottles that are not properly labeled. So it could look like water, and it's probably not water. So make sure we are labeling those properly. Bloodborne pathogens. So what is a bloodborne pathogen? Pretty much it's a microorganism present in your blood or bodily fluids. We need to be talking about this on the employee's first couple days. If you're like, oh, bloodborne pathogens don't apply to me, well, every single employee and every single person has blood and bodily fluids, so it definitely does apply to you. If you're just in an office environment and I'm sitting at my computer and I get a paper cut, all right, well, now there's blood on the desk, there's blood on the floor, whatever that may mean, we need to clean that up. So it could be your hepatitis A's, B's, C's, your HIV, whatever it may be, we need to have someone trained to clean up those spills. So if you have first responders trained in first aid, this is perfect. You can tack on this training with them as well. I know Heather alluded to some LMS training. If you are a client of BHS, we do offer some of this bloodborne pathogen training through our LMS system as well. Then ergonomics. So what is ergonomics? It's pretty much the study of how watching people work. You can see this is a video of, we placed a virtual exoskeleton over somebody doing their job. You can see whenever the skeleton turns red, this is a hazardous motion. So we'll go ahead and play this video, but we need to be training our new hires on how to properly lift. How should we, or are there pre-shift warm-up stretches? Are we doing things to prevent injury, prevent these back claims? If you've ever had a back claim, you know that it's very expensive. And this employee is now injured, they can't do their job, so we need to work on things we can do from a preventative side to make sure we hopefully prevent those types of injuries. Workplace violence, we see it in the news all the time. This can happen at your facility. I go to, again, many different facilities. Some I have to badge in. Some I have to wait in the lobby to let me in. Some I can just walk right into the plant floor, and if I'm a disgruntled employee that just got fired and I think I was wrongfully terminated, who knows what I would be thinking. So these are all things you should think about. Is anyone able to get into our facility who we don't want to have access to our facility? We live in Michigan. There's lots of hunters here. Talk about with your employees. Do we allow weapons in our cars in the parking lot because they're going hunting after work? Or what does that look like? We want to be able to talk about these things before an event happens. So active shooter, I know it's always in the news. At the very least, watch this run, hide, fight video with your employees. It's probably not the best training you can do from an active shooter standpoint. We can get you something better, or provide resources for something better, but at the very least, we should be watching this video. Then that also couples in with site security. So again, do we have an alarm or badge system when you get into your site? And then do we talk about good security practices? If we have doors open because it's hot in the summer, do we have dock gates? I mean, pretty much all of our clients have some sort of dock door. Do you have a dock gate that goes across it so no one can jump up in this dock gate? And then closing any doors that are propped open around the facility. Talk about this with the new hire. Know that they're not supposed to loan their badge to Joe so they can, because they left theirs at home, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure that employees are knowing these good site security practices. If you have any environmental stuff, if you're ISO 14001, if you have to do your Tier 2 reports, your TRI reports, any environmental policies or procedures or reports that you're responsible for from a company standpoint, this is your perfect time to talk to your employees about what you're doing from an environmental standpoint. Are we recycling? Are we doing reusable packaging? When you go on break, is it the employee's responsibility to shut off their fan, their light, their conveyor? If you do so, that's going to save your company a lot of money. But talk about this so this employee knows before they get on the floor what they're supposed to do. Then lastly, if I'm a new employee and I get hurt on the job, what do I do? Do I not tell anybody? Do I just go back to work? Do I fill out an incident report? Do I tell you about it 3 weeks later? These are all things to keep in mind. And then what should be reported? If I'm a high-low driver and I run into a piece of racking, do I just keep on driving or do I stop and fill out a property damage incident report? If I'm walking down the aisleway and a stack of materials falls down right in front of me, is that something that needs to be reported? Well, we should talk to them about near-miss reporting. And then talk about that employees will never get in trouble for failure to report an incident. The only way they will get disciplined is if they had an incident and then you find out about it because they didn't report it. So make a culture is very important, but make a culture of early reporting, on-time reporting, and your insurance carriers will also thank you if you get all of your claims reported within 24 hours as well. Discuss your OC health provider. Are they going to Corewell if they need medical treatment? Are they going to MedOne or Concentra? This is all stuff that is important to talk about on the employee's first couple of days. So really quick, BHS from a risk management standpoint, we can help you with some of these things. We can provide you your new hire safety onboarding template. We have standard operating procedures, policies, procedures, trainings for your lockout, your crane, your forklift. We'll at least get you 95% of the way there. And then as Heather said, we need to customize it. So we have LMS systems available to you. Anything you may need, you can feel free to reach out to myself or Chris, who will speak in the next topic, and we can get that for you. And now we'll open it up for a couple minutes of questions. We have about 5-ish minutes. And then here's all of our contact information, Lisa, Heather, and myself. So I just want to thank you all for your time today, and we'll open up for some quick questions if there are any. Thank you.
We do have a couple microphones circulating, Denise and Chris, so if anybody has any questions, we can jump right into those. We've got a question right up front here. Here, I'll come to you. I'm closest.
Just a quick question. So I get what you were kind of saying, Lisa, like just don't throw them in front of a safety video and expect them to get it. So I've gone to a couple other seminars where they say either make it funny or make it scary, put the scare into them, or put some of their peers in a video and kind of make it your own in those trainings. Do you have one that kind of takes hold? Like I think of the fire drill. So one time when I did a fire thing, I did the Office video. I made it funny, did the Office. Then I went scary and showed them the music concert, you know, that venue in, I think it was Ohio or Indiana. Went for the scare, you know, and then tried to do our peers. Do you have a way that you feel that the employees are grabbing, or what a company should do more than just throwing a paper at them or a video? Is there a way that you think is going to grab an employee better?
I love those ideas. You know, there's this cool technology out there right now, and it's called a cell phone. I have one. I don't know if anybody else does, but these things are pretty amazing, and so you can make your own video. I think that that's fantastic. And I love the fact that you have brought in some of your other associates to help you. It makes it fun, right? It makes it part of your culture. I think it has to be sort of specific to you. It's very hard to find a one size fits all, to your point earlier, right? Like what works for me is not going to work for you, is not going to work for you, is not going to work for you. So your training really does have to be custom. Again, a template can only get you so far, or a standardized video can only get you so far, but actually walking people through it. I love your idea though of incorporating your own people to do a skit or something like that, obviously safely, right? We don't want to do the scary one with our own associates, but yeah, I don't know. Heather, do you have any other ideas on that one? Any other things to add?
I've actually used both of those. It was the Great White Concert. Yes. Yep. Fire broke out from their pyrotechnics, and one of the doors was locked. People got jammed. Multiple people died. And then the Office one was just funny. I love both of those ideas, and you can just download them from YouTube to embed those into your training. But then you still got to make sure that you follow that up with whatever's specific to your company.
Any other questions here before we wrap up? Heather, do you have a video of you sticking the giant needle into the chicken? We should totally circulate that so everyone can watch it.
All right.
Oh,
Tim,
we got one more question.
Yep, we got a question back here.
Zach, you had mentioned employees being afraid to report incidents timely because of fear, potentially. And you had said that, mentioning to them that they'll only be disciplined if they don't report it timely. But what if it's an incident where they do have to be written up for it? And how can we create a culture where they're not afraid to tell us?
I mean, it's definitely on a case-to-case basis. Not every incident is going to be the same. So if I am a forklift driver and I hit a piece of racking, that's probably warranted of a write-up. But if I am doing exactly what the job description tells me, the JSA tells me, the SOP tells me, and then I still get hurt while doing that job, then maybe it's not on the employee. Then maybe it's on management for how we put this together, the situation we put the employee in. But if I'm not wearing my gloves and I'm on a task I'm supposed to be wearing my gloves and I get hurt, sure, they should be written up. But we wanted to make it a culture of, hey, if you do get hurt, we don't want to shelter you from reporting this. We want to know about everything that happens on our facility, at our facility, so we can continue to learn from that experience and learn from that incident, and then bring the employee involved in the investigation, have them come develop corrective actions with you and the other team members, so then they feel like they are involved, and then hopefully no more incidents happen as a result of it. So I would say it's definitely on a case-to-case basis. There's definitely some where you need some discipline, but also some where, hey, that might have been on us, that's on management. So just try to foster and have goals of, hey, all incidents should be reported within 24 hours no matter what. Great question, thank you.
This one gets me fired up. And this will, I'll end because I know Chris needs to come on stage too. Oftentimes, because I do so much around safety culture, I actually find that it's very rare that it is an employee solely issue. If somebody got a chemical burn because they weren't wearing gloves and your SOP says, I'm supposed to wear gloves, your initial thought might be, I'm gonna write them up because they weren't wearing gloves and our SOP says so. Okay, I would say, have you done a full root cause analysis? Because if that department manager has created a culture where it's okay for employees to not wear gloves, that's not the employee's issue, and I don't think the employee should be written up. That is a management issue. That's a management failure. And so oftentimes I find that there are systemic and management-related issues to incidents that happen. So I would just make sure I dig deep.
We've got one last question over here.
And I'll try to be quick. As a work comp risk management from the insurance carrier side, we see in an environment now where 40, 45, 50% of our claims on our big claims are someone who's been on the job less than 12 months, our new folks. And one of the things that you mentioned, Lisa, was that follow-up, that 30, 60, 90, and I preach that till I'm blue in the face. The one thing that I think management doesn't understand is we've trained them day one, week one, month one, and now we're done. We washed and rinsed, but we didn't repeat. And in that environment, I think it's so critical that we repeat because they learn the cheat codes and they learn how to do things the wrong way. And then we get these accidents and they're blaming the employee for not, like you mentioned, well, he should have known. Well, maybe he didn't know because you thought you trained him perfectly, and then they learned how to do things the wrong way. You've got to continually re-bring them up to that. So my question is, how do you, from a corporate standpoint or from a policy procedures upfront standpoint, to convince management, you know, like I said, I preach it till I'm blue in the face, but to get them to understand, put this in your policies, procedures, that it becomes the norm of what you do going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, I hire Heather and help because it's not just safety onboarding. Then that's really the focus for today's conversation, but it's a comprehensive safety program and a comprehensive safety culture, and therefore it has to be an ongoing thing, right? Where we have a safety program, we have safety training, we have a safety officer, we have a safety committee. This every step along the way is getting consistent review, and we have annual, monthly, quarterly training. Again, maybe in some of our more hazardous roles, but there's regular training ongoing, so it's not just the one and done, right? It's just part of our annual cadence, and everybody has an understanding of whether they're in a highly hazardous role or not, how they can play a part in enhancing our safety culture. I think it has to start from the top, right? So if you're in the C-suite, if you're the owner of the company, you're the founder, right? Like making sure that that's a part of every meeting, right? Every cascading communication, so that every manager then understands what their role is, right? Like as managers, our job is to get peak performance out of our people, right? We can't really do that if they're injured or they're ill or there's an accident, right? Keeping them safe on the job is a key component of that. So it does take multiple hands and working very closely with your HR professional, your insurance organization, the Heather Chapmans of the world, who I have worked with for many, many times, and helped to really build a comprehensive safety program that can long outlive just the onboarding component we're discussing here today.
All right, we're going to wrap up our first session here. If we give a big round of applause, that was a fantastic presentation by Lisa, Heather, and Zach. We're going to run a real quick transition here. If you need a bathroom break, we're going to take 5 minutes maximum as we get our next round of speakers up. Grab some coffee. There's some great food still out front that looks like it hasn't been touched. Please touch it because we can't take it all with us. So thank you. All right, one more minute, folks. If you could make your way back to your seats, we're about to get started and introduce our next round of speakers. All right, folks, we're going to kick off our last session here. Very interesting second topic for you guys today, the problem child. And we're not talking about one of your kids at home, but we may be talking about one of your employees back at the office. Very interesting topic. If we've learned anything from our speakers so far today, and Andrew's going to love this because this is in reference to a football game that's happening this Saturday night. The team, right? Running a business is a challenge in today's environment from a safety perspective, HR perspective, risk management in general. When you throw words like workers' comp, FMLA, ADA, and then probably the most popular Earned Sick Time Act into the mix, you absolutely have to have a solid team behind you to support you in your efforts to manage your business, managing your employees, and most importantly, when we have that favorite problem child come to the table. So we have Andrew Cassini, an attorney and partner at Henn Lesbrance, joining us today. And then we have Denise Newhouse, HR consultant at BHS, and Chris Skolton, risk management advisor at BHS, joining us today as well. So a warm round of applause for our speakers here.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? We got a little bit of a short break. My name's Andrew Cassini. Some of you may have seen me present before. I'm an attorney. Please don't hold that entirely against me. But I've never hired an exotic chicken vet like Heather. But I have recently the opportunity to hire an exotic veterinarian. I'm a single dad. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and that means I own cats. Wouldn't be my preference, but I do. One morning I drop off Carmela at school, that's my daughter's name, come on back to the house, and I'm getting old, so I'm doing my morning Monday tradition of laying out all of the pills that I have to take in my pill minder. It's a truly embarrassing thing to do. Tend to wait until there are only animals in the house to do it. So my phone rings in the other room while I'm in the process of doing this. I go out and grab it. I come back out to the kitchen where I was putting everything away, and I get to watch one of my 2 tortoiseshell cats in the process of eating an Adderall. Now, I'll tell you, if you've never seen a cat eat an Adderall, and you haven't, they can't chew. So it's like, it looks like one of the dinosaur grabber toy things, kind of trying to do it. And I frankly couldn't believe what I was seeing. I give a call to my veterinarian. The veterinarian was like, we don't really do medication issues. And I was thinking to myself, I don't think this is how it would go if I called a doctor. I think that if Carmela drank bleach, they wouldn't be like, that's actually another guy. I don't know what to tell you. So I had to call Animal Poison Control. Animal Poison Control is a number that you can call. And when you call, what they'll do is they'll ask you how much your cat weighs, as if I had any freaking clue how much my cat weighs. Then they'll ask you what your cat consumed, and I'll tell them Adderall. And then they say, have you seen any adverse symptoms? And I'd say, the cat isn't doing a Rubik's Cube or anything. I can't really tell you whether or not the cat's feeling anything. Anyway, they called me back about 3 hours later, and they told me, yeah, we actually looked it up, and a cat can actually have quite a bit of Adderall, and it's fine, which is a surprise to me. And then they sent me a bill for $2,700. So, dealing with problem child employees. There's a transition for you. Here's the thing that we go over, and anytime we're ever working through a situation, when we say problem child employee, you already know who I'm talking about in your workplace right now. You're already thinking about it. You see a face inside of your head. That's right. And I think that the really important part of this is that we actually have to define what the problem is. We got to figure that out first. Why is this an issue? What is it about the law that makes this a sticky situation when you have employees that maybe they're abusing their leave or maybe they're not, and you can't quite figure it out. You're in that zone of not knowing whether or not they're doing something wrong or your policies are somehow falling short. Is there anything that you can do? Are you violating some aspect of the law? And when it just feels like a big ball of worry that's not differentiated, that doesn't really help us in any way. So I think the first step is really defining what is the problem we're trying to address. And, yikes. Well, okay, we're just going to wing it. That's okay. If I can do it with cat Adderall, I can do it with this. The problem that you guys are facing, why does it matter? Why does it feel bad? Why does it feel like you're in between a rock and a hard place? It appears just when I need it. It feels like you're in between a rock and a hard place for a very discrete and particular reason, which is that you have that maligned 5%. It's the ancient employment lawyer adage, right? 90% of your employees just want to do the best job they can. They want to go home, have dinner with their families, and their work is a part of their day, and they want to take it seriously. 5% of your employees, their work is their identity, it's their soul, they drive. The purpose of your mission at your organization is driven forward primarily by them, and 5% of your employees hate you so much and want to ruin everything. So that 5%, what are they doing? What they're doing is they're living intentionally in a danger zone that is caused between a Bermuda Triangle, if you will, which I will, caused between three specific legal protections: workers' compensation, employees that may hurt themselves on the job or experience a work-related injury or illness. The FMLA, it starts with FML for a reason, and that's the Family Medical Leave Act, and the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. All three of those statutes all have their own requirements that you need to navigate. And you're constantly wondering to yourself, what is the problem? The problem is that you're unsure how to disentangle those three things, so you're constantly wondering whether you're doing something wrong. Well, I'd love to be able to tell you, that's a bummer that keeps happening. Boy, I'm really hitting the wrong button here. I'd love to be able to tell you that it's gotten a lot easier. I'd love to be able to stand right up here on this stage and say, hey, one of those three, you don't need to worry about it. Actually, the opposite is true. Now it's even tougher. You've got your workers' compensation, you've got your FMLA, you've got your ADA, and now you have the Michigan Earned Sick Time Act. This sucks. I'm not saying whether or not it's a good law or a bad law. I don't get into politics like that. I don't really care about what could be. That's the job of other people and visionaries in our society to drive us forward, hopefully. But my job is to help you understand what is, and what is that you're caught in between this four-headed monster. It's not the Bermuda Triangle, it's the Bermuda Quadrangle Square. It's the Bermuda Square, that's what it is. But there is actually a way forward. That's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, and both Chris and Denise are going to come on up here. They're going to talk with you a little bit about some of the problems they encounter dealing with those various prongs. And then I think what we're going to do mostly is give a big opportunity for you to bring forward your questions, because that's really the way that we do this. There's not any magical path forward to defeat the four-headed dragon. It's just all different things that we have assembled throughout the years. And frankly, there will be people who ask questions today where we will be able to give you very definite and solid answers. And frankly, there will be other answers that will come from the audience today that may help you with a future situation. So I think we can just move on to our next section. Chris?
All right, thank you, Andrew. He's always a tough person to follow there. So, Chris Golton, risk management at BHS. We're going to just talk about workers' compensation a little bit here. So as both Lisa and Andrew mentioned, so Lisa mentioned that we don't like to come to work. We always want to come do our best job. And then Andrew mentioned we're talking about the employee that, as a former safety manager, I always said I have a small sect of my employees that will work extremely hard to not work. So how do we help handle those people? This presentation is designed for that small set, but it will also help just manage your overall programs. So it will help your good employees too. So let's talk about work comp real quickly. So We're just going to talk about some key points. Policies and procedures, safety, loss control, prompt reporting, return to work, that's a big one, communication, and then partnerships. All right, let's talk about policies and procedures. I'm not going to hit this too hard because our previous presentation, I thought they did an excellent job kind of outlining. So when you're doing your onboarding, you need those policies and procedures. You need your written guidelines, though, if you don't have it on paper. I've had my OSHA enforcement tell me if it's not on paper, if it's all verbal, it didn't happen. So if you're going to work with an employee that is trying to game your system, that is going to work real hard to not work, if you don't have it on paper, how can you expect them to know what those expectations are? Do you have an employee handbook? Denise can help with an employee handbook. Do you have an employee safety manual? A lot of companies will try and mix those two together, and they get to be real thick booklets. Let's separate them out so we can make sure we define what your employee needs to know. Regular updates. Rules change, laws change, your processes change. If they change, do you communicate that to your employee? If you don't communicate, how can you hold them to a certain standard? All right, safety programs. Again, I'm not going to go into the individual ones. They did that in the previous presentation, all those different topics that can help you. The big one, though, when it comes to work comp, your incident reporting and investigation. Like Zach mentioned, that 24-hour period. If you don't have that 24 hours, you're putting yourself in a really bad spot. You want to get to know what happened, get it on paper, do your investigation, determine your root cause so you can take appropriate course of action. That along goes with your policies and procedures. OSHA has certain procedures that are required to be trained annually. It could be different when you're onboarding. It might be more advanced on your onboarding, but annually there are certain things. They talked about bloodborne pathogens. That's one that has to be talked about every year. Maybe it doesn't have to be the in-depth one, but it has to be an awareness. If you're not going through all these policies and procedures, again, you can't hold your employee accountable for something that they don't know that they're supposed to be following. Then there's best practices. They talked about customization. Everybody here has different hazards, different exposures. How do you customize it for your place of employment? That's something that we can come out and help with. And then training. You have a policy and procedure, you haven't communicated it, you have to train your employees on it. If I've had employees in the past where I felt like there were a lot of red flags with a certain injury. I didn't believe it was an injury. They were claiming an injury. I went back to the supervisors, to the departments. Did we do this training? Yeah, we did it. Okay, show me that sign-in sheet. Let me know that they had it. Let me see that copy of that presentation. I don't have that. Well, I can't prove that I told that employee that they were supposed to do this. That's a vital part of your work comp. You have to prove that you trained and educated your employee. Claims management. So the injuries happen. You've done your investigation. What do you do now? The damage is done. Let's try and minimize how much risk you have. So again, prompt reporting. From an insurance standpoint, all your carriers, they will always harp on you for what they call lag time. When I was a safety manager, I got my hand slapped early in my career when I waited about 3 weeks. I wanted to try and manage that claim in person. It went bad after a couple weeks. Now I had to go back to my carrier and say, yeah, this happened 3 weeks ago, and their first question is, what has happened in the 3 weeks? And that is a vital question to ask. From a work comp standpoint, the employer has 28 days to manage that claim. In my mistake, I wasted 21 days of those 28. After that 28, that employee can go wherever they want. And trust me, there are plenty of doctors in West Michigan where employees know they can go to if they want to sit home and not work and collect their work comp check instead of being at the facility being productive. There are plenty of doctors that will aid them with that. So that 28 days is vital. You want to hit that as fast as possible. Efficient processing. I put in there garbage in, garbage out. When you file your claim with your carrier, if you put in the bare minimum information, that's what they know. So it's tough to put in the bare minimum information and expect a great result. The more information you put in, the faster you put it in, the faster you let your carrier know, the faster you let BHS know, the more help we can give you with all that information. So I remember my first employer, they put in the bare amount. They put name, job title, the date it happened, and struck by. Struck by could be anything. So give details to your carriers. That is going to help manage your claim. Record keeping. Anything you do with a claim process, it's got to be on paper. If a claim goes bad and you do end up down the road with some litigation, you have to be able to prove everything that you're claiming. We'll kind of get into that a little bit deeper. Some other things that you can do when a claim does go bad, outside of your normal process. If they're missing appointments or they're going to appointments and you don't know exactly what they're saying to the physician, through your partner, through your carrier, you can on certain times assign a nurse case manager. They will go to those appointments with your employee. It's not something you're going to do. You're not going to sit in with that doctor. Your nurse case manager has that right. They can do that. That can aid you with certain claims. If it's still going bad and you don't necessarily agree with the doctor, doctors are smart. They know what they're doing, but they're human. They do make mistakes. You want to just get a second opinion, you can go through your carrier, ask for an independent medical examination. That's another course of action that you could potentially take. Again, if you have questions about this, you can contact myself, Denise. We have a claims department, Christine Ensley, phenomenal at helping work through tough claims. You don't have to do it on your own. Return to work. You have to have a return to work program. And this should be done prior to any injury. So you should go back to your place of employment today, ask if you have a return to work program. If you don't, first thing you need is a policy. Zach talked about, we can help you with templates, get you 90% of the way there. We'll customize it for you then. One of the things when you have an injured employee, you have a return to work acknowledgement letter. Sit down with your employee. You're hurt. You've come back with restrictions, modifications, or you're off work. Here's your outline. We're going to offer you this alternative work. This is what your expectations are. Sign off, date it, file it away. If it ever comes back, you have proof that you have reviewed all this with your employee. Communication. As a work comp manager in the past, if I called an employee, I always documented all communication. Whether it was a phone call, they swung into the office to talk, I always had a separate case. Any dialogue with your employee should be put on paper. You could have work comp injury come back years later. You're going to forget about that phone call. You're going to forget about that discussion you had. Put it on paper so you can refer back to it. And then again, documentation. Policies, if they're cleared for return to work, have a return to work document that they can sign off, acknowledging that their doctor has cleared them. As the employer, you understand they're cleared. As the employee, they understand that they are cleared. They no longer have restrictions. They can do their job that they're hired to do. And then medical notes. Make sure that you're following the medical notes, the documentation, keeping that on file. I'm not going to go into this too deep again because they talked about earlier training and communication, ongoing education. Again, annual training is required for certain topics. If you have not done that process changed, you didn't update them, employees hurt, they're making a claim. They said earlier that they come back, they should have known. If you haven't updated them, they didn't know. Not much you can do. You're taking that claim on then. Sorry, you're stuck with it. Supervisor training. A lot of companies forget to train their supervisors, their managers, their foremans. Doesn't matter what field you're in. Do they understand what work comp is? Do they understand just basic laws and regulations because they are managing your people? Do they understand what return to work is? Do they understand what modification and job restriction? Do they understand what that is? You have to give them a little bit higher level of training. That's going to aid you when a case goes wrong. And then partnerships. Between BHS, Zach and myself and our claims department, we can help out. You have your insurance carriers. They deal with claims all the time. They've seen it all. They know the best course of action. You're paying a lot of money for insurance. Why not put them to work for you too? They have a lot of insurance advice and ways to go around and do things. So use them also. And then medical providers. If you do have a case, you don't understand something, you don't agree with it, don't be afraid to reach out to that doctor. They are only human beings. They put their pants on the same way you do in the morning. Just be respectful to the doctor. Ask questions, get clarification. It's okay to call them. I've had it plenty of times where I didn't agree with what the doctor said for restrictions. Maybe he didn't understand your process, so he said no lifting. When I call him back, hey, I've got 5 pounds. You tell me that they can't lift 5 pounds? Okay, yes, we can do that. So it's okay to call them. Just have a respectful, professional dialogue with them. Ways we can help, they went over this. Policies and procedures, forms, handbook, manuals, training materials, safety checklists, complex claim reviews, training calendars. Last time they talked about these trainings, you should have an annual training calendar that you go over every single year. The ones that are required, the ones that are specific to your site. We can help put those training calendars together for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Denise, and when Denise is done, we'll have, should be a pretty lengthy time for questions and answers.
Thank you, Chris. And I'm looking at the time to make sure I don't talk too long, so if you see me tapping my phone, it's because I can get a little lengthy. I don't have chickens, and I don't have cats, but I do have an 8-year-old goldfish, 8 years old. So I don't have any fun stories about it. It just kind of swims around the tank and does its thing. So we're going to talk about, Andrew already mentioned the Bermuda Triangle, and I've done training on this a lot of times, maybe with some of you. And I started thinking, what do we call it now? And you said... I said quadrangle. Yeah, I was like, some kind of rhombus. I maybe just am going to call it the medical mess. I don't know, because this can be anything from a workers' comp situation to the Michigan Earned Sick Time Act to the Family Medical Leave Act. Oh, and I didn't get Andrew's joke at first either. It took me about 20 seconds. I was like, FML, Family Medical Leave? I didn't get it. So I'm throwing myself under the bus on that one. You probably saw me like laughing 20 seconds later. I was like, oh, I get it now. So Family Medical Leave Act and, of course, the Americans with Disabilities Act. How do all those work together? How do we know which one to tackle first? Next, how do we know if we're even supposed to do something? So we want to talk about that a little bit. And I also want to reiterate what Chris or Andrew said, I forget. Most employees want to do the right thing, and most employees do the right thing. And a lot of your leave of absences will follow process, and they'll be okay. So we just want to talk about, what do you do when it's not okay? Or what do you do when you have an employee that seems like they don't want to work? They don't want to come back to work. And so we're going to start with the Michigan Earned Sick Time Act. I have PTSD on this topic, so if I start shaking, you'll know why. This has been a rough road for all of you, and I just want to say to all of you, good job getting through it. It's been a lot, but we're still learning right now, and I think we're going to see some case law that'll probably redefine some of the things in it eventually. But, employees are supposed to give us notice. That was the first thing that says, required to provide the company with 7 days notice if it's foreseeable. And we go, oh, good, but whose employees do that? Not very often. Even if they have appointments that they booked 4 months ago, they don't tell you about, they don't put it on the calendar. So we're spending most of our time in the second bullet, which is, if the need is not foreseeable, notice should be given as soon as practicable. And so how do we, I've talked to a lot of you and heard some of you say, well, this is just a free pass to be absent all the time now. And you're right, to a certain extent. We can't retaliate for people using their time under the Michigan Earned Sick Time Act. But I also want to point out that if you're a small employer, 10 or fewer, it's 40 hours. If you're a large employer, it's 72 hours. So it's not forever. You do have some absences that are protected. You have to pay the time. But there was one little piece in the Earned Sick Time Act that I thought was a positive for employers, where you can write in your policy your call-in procedure. What does that look like? And if you don't have that in your handbook and your attendance policy right now, I would recommend going back to your office and making that happen, because that does give you a piece that you can address with the employee without waiting for 3 consecutive days to ask for medical documentation. And the 3 consecutive days doesn't happen very often. We're a lot of times dealing with these one-offs, and they get very frustrating. So make sure you have a call-in procedure. If the employee doesn't call in and follow that procedure, you can discipline them. You still have to pay their earned sick time. You have to pay them. You can't keep them from using that, but you can discipline them for not following the call-in procedure. So there's a little out there that we wanted to talk about. Then we have the FMLA. And I just want to note right from the top, because I get this call a lot, where the employee has been injured at work and you guys get tired of having them kind of hanging out there, and when can I get rid of this employee? And if you are subject to the FMLA, you need to run the FMLA clock currently with your workers' comp leave. So FMLA is about job protection and benefit continuation. Workers' comp isn't about that. Now, we do try to keep people employed because we want to get them back to work to help keep our costs down. but it is, the FMLA is what protects that job and the benefits. So just keep that in mind, that the benefits could terminate partially through that leave when you have a workers' comp situation that's dragging. Follow the documentation process. I get a lot of calls where, hey, the employee did not ask for FMLA. And I said, well, didn't they tell you that they needed something medical? And, you know, the act says the employee doesn't have to say FMLA. It's the employer's responsibility when you see an employee needs some time off for their own serious health condition, birth, adoption, foster of a child, and so on. And we're mostly talking about medical today. So that it is your job to engage in that process. The benefit of doing that is you're having communication with that employee. You're talking about what's expected. You're filling out the paperwork. You know, you're doing the Department of Labor process. You're letting them know, like, this is what happens with your deductions. You have to have paid time off. We do have short-term disability. Here's how you apply for that. Just go through all those things so that the employee knows what to expect. And then the benefit for you is they go get the medical certification from their physician, which is very detailed. It almost looks a little overwhelming at times, but it steps through all of the different pieces of the FMLA and will help you understand when is that employee going to come back, what's that going to look like, and it's going to give you a lot of information. So follow that process. And then if this is a leave of absence that the FMLA doesn't apply, then what? And if I've worked with you on your handbook, I've probably talked to you about this. You know, what do you do when it's a non-qualifying leave under the FMLA? Do you have a separate leave of absence policy that's maybe shorter, get you started? Do you not have that? And if you don't, do you want to talk about that? Give me a call. But you do want to have a plan. What am I going to do if this is a non-FMLA qualifying leave? So I just put this graphic up here because we kind of know the step 1, step 2, step 3. I also want to point out the bottom part, and this is a graphic from the Department of Labor's Employer Guide for FMLA, and it's small, so you probably can't really see it. But there are some things that you can do to combat, or you don't just assume just because an employee got a medical certification that their FMLA is good. You need to evaluate that. And if it's not filled out completely, you can kick it back to the employee. And they have 7 days to get that back to their physician and get any updates. The second one, you can actually call the physician's office. I've had calls where it's like, I don't know, like, it looks like the employee's kid filled this out. Like, I don't know, this doesn't look legit to me. The medical certification, I'm questioning it. That signature looks like the employee's signature. So, I mean, if you have questions, ask them. Don't just take it at face value, dig into it. So you can call the doctor's office and ask clarification questions, or you can ask to have it authenticated. So take advantage of that. Some doctors will not talk to you, some will. And then you can also ask for second and third opinions. If you are not sure, something doesn't feel right about the leave request, or it just, you know, you have a sixth sense that something's wrong, you can actually ask for a second opinion. If the first and second opinion are different, you can also go for a third opinion. Now remember, the employer has to pay for those. So I was putting this together and I thought, I'm gonna put intermittent leave up there and I'm just gonna make everybody feel really sad. So I'm sorry. It's a lot. And there are so many circumstances where an employee gets what we call an attendance-free pass. And we want to manage those. An employee gets those. There are some things that you can do and strategies you can take to try to help keep those under control. And, you know, the first one I remember in my HR career, it was really trendy to go get your doctor to write that you get migraines. And who can prove if an employee has a migraine or not? So if they call and go, I have a migraine, okay, well, I guess you're off today. So, you know, address and watch for attendance trends. Sometimes that helps if it's always the Friday before a holiday weekend, or, you know, just look for those things and have a plan on how you're going to address those. Follow the medical certification. When that comes in, don't just take it and you didn't read it and you're like, okay, here's your designation. I guess we're kind of hosed at this point, but we'll deal with it. Look at that, follow it, pay attention to it. If the physician writes that the employee should have 1 to 2 absences a month, and they have 4 to 6, you can start talking about recertification, and you would want to do that. So recertification, and I just do want to note, you can't just do recertification anytime. It does have to partner with an attendance issue. So somebody's absent and it looks odd to you and you start looking at those trends, you can ask the physician to do a recertification at that point. And then I already kind of covered the second and third opinions. You can't do those once you're deep into the leave, but when you get a new medical certification, you can't say, well, I'm not sure that these attendances are legit. You know, it's been a couple months, I'm going to ask for the second opinion now. You want to start doing that right at the beginning. Require the employee to use your call-in procedure. So there that comes up again. FMLA does also allow you as the employer to have a call-in procedure and require your employee to use that. So if your call-in procedure says call in as soon as possible, you don't have a call-in procedure. Okay, so if it says just let us know when you're going to be absent, you don't have a call-in procedure. It needs to be something like, you need to call this number 2 hours in advance, or you are allowed to text your supervisor, but we need to hear from you an hour prior to your shift, or within an hour of your start, or whatever works for you, and every one of you is going to be different in that space. A couple other things that you can do, and these are less well-known, and sometimes make us a little bit nervous, is you can specifically address with your employees if they have intermittent appointments. So maybe someone's going through treatment, they have a chronic condition. You can talk to them about when their physician is open, what kind of hours they have, and you can ask them to set up their treatments that will work for your organization. So if you know their physician has late hours on a Wednesday, you can say it'd be really great if you could try to get your appointments on Wednesdays, and that way you don't have to take as much time off. So it is okay to engage in those conversations. I know with medical, we get nervous. We don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to get sued. And so sometimes we hesitate. How much can we say and how much can we do? So you can ask that. And then there's also a provision for a temporary transfer. And this one fascinates me because do any of you have employees that go get an intermittent medical certification that goes forever? Because they know how many hours they get, and they know how long they have to stretch it out, and then they recertify every year, and so it's forever. And they're in a job that affects you when they call in. I've had conversations with some of you. This is so stressful. We don't know what do we do? We have this person scheduled to go to a job site, and now I have no one. So if you have someone in a position that you feel like is difficult for your organization to manage, you can consider a temporary transfer. Now, temporary transfer and an intermittent leave that goes on forever is probably not temporary. It'd be very difficult. I mean, at the end of whatever's happening, so when you have those legit circumstances, like, hey, I'm going through cancer treatment, for example, and, you know, when I get better, I'm going to go back to work in full. Maybe you transfer that person for a period of time when their treatment is done and they're like, hey, I'm good, I'm able to return to work in full. Then you put them back to their original job. And I do also want to note here, if you do a temporary transfer, it does have to be same pay and benefits, but the job duties do not have to be exactly the same. So we talk about in FMLA, same job, same pay, same duties. When they're on the intermittent leave process and you do a job transfer, the job can be different. Now the Americans with Disabilities Act. And my first thing was, when is this even applicable? So, I mean, why are we talking about this? This is for people that are disabled and they need a special piece of equipment to do their job, or those kind of easier things. I just used air quotes and I hate those. We were laughing about that earlier, and I just did it. So, I mean, first of all, there is the Americans with Disabilities Act. There's the interactive reasonable accommodation process when an employee comes to you and says, I can't do part of my job because of. And that could be part of one of your problem children. They're trying to get out of doing a part of their job. Or they say, oh, you know, my doctor said I can only do my job from home, and you do have a need for people to have a presence. How do you deal with that? But it can also just be somebody does have a medical condition where maybe they need a piece of equipment to help them lift, a safety belt or whatever that looks like. Did I say the right term, safety belt? Probably not, right? Probably not. Okay, ask Chris or Zach about that. I just said safety belt, and I don't know if that's a thing. So, have specific forms for both the employee's request so that you know what they're asking for, and then send them to their physician with a form. And we have these things. If you need them, you can feel free to reach out so that you're not just taking the employee's word for it. And I don't know how many, if I've ever talked to any of you, I'm like, did you take the employee's word for it? And you've probably talked to me and I've said that to you. And then I kind of chuckle because we want to be nice. We want to help our employees out. And then what happens? And usually it's the supervisors. They're being nice. They want to be nice to their team. They want them to like them. And then they get sick of it. I don't want to do this anymore. I let this employee do this. I'm done. I got to get rid of them. And they come to HR or leadership and they're, this guy's got to go or this girl's got to go. And you say, okay, well, why? What do we, and you've already made the accommodation, so I'm not exactly sure how you can call it an undue hardship at that point. So make sure that your supervisors understand the basics of employment law. Employment Law 101 is what I call it, and I've probably done that training at some of your locations. If I haven't and you'd like me to meet with your supervisors, happy to do that. So they understand the foundation of when it should be a red flag for them to get some help. So let's see. Yeah, so I guess I already talked about the last one too. This is our favorite one. I remember we were kind of doing a run through, and I put this slide up, and Andrew and I both started cracking up because who hasn't, I mean, how many times have you heard that sentence? This employee has been a poor performer all along. Why can't I get rid of him? And then I always say, well, what do you have documented? What conversations have you had? And the line, if I'm talking over the phone, gets really silent, or if I'm on a virtual call, the head goes down, or if I'm face-to-face, it's like, oh yeah, I probably knew you were gonna ask me that. So it's very difficult. I mean, now you tied that person into a medical situation where they could potentially have a liability claim against you if you do it wrong. So that poor performer that you did not manage that turned into a problem child is partially our fault as a business because we didn't do what we could do to lead up to that. So we want to make sure we're doing that. So document. I know that if you supervise people, you also have another very busy job. I know it. I supervise some people. And you just don't think about it all the time, or time gets away from you. And I always share this example. My very first HR job was in the hospitality world, and the maintenance manager had this little spiral notebook in his pocket, and he would make notes of things that needed to be fixed, but he also made notes about performance because he would notice, oh, that needs to be fixed, but I assigned that to Joe Schmo, and Joe Schmo didn't do his job, so he'll note that. And long story short, we had an employment liability, and we had to, stand in front of a judge, and that notebook saved us. It was really weird. So it wasn't like really involved documentation. Just making some notes really helped us. Consistent treatment, you've got the employee that is your problem child now, and they're the only ones that you're paying attention to. They're the only ones that you're giving write-ups or corrective action or performance improvement plans, whatever you call it, for what is going on. You got to treat all your employees the same. You don't want them to feel like, look, they're retaliating against me because I had a leave under the FMLA, or I used my Earned Sick Time Act hours, or I asked for a reasonable accommodation. And then act promptly. This is a tough one. We want to do this as soon as it happens. Anything that you leave sit. I'm guessing some of you are parents, right? Raise your hand if you're a parent. Okay, so your toddler does something that they're not supposed to do. Maybe they are pulling dirt out of a plant. One of my boys did that one time, throwing it on the floor. And I don't say anything right then. And later, let's say an hour or two later, I go slap my toddler's hand. Does my toddler know why he's getting his hand slapped? And I don't want to make light. We're adults. But if you don't address it when it's happening, they're not going to always remember, understand, or you've moved on to something else. So make sure that you handle things promptly when they're happening. Train your supervisors. There is a process that we use in business to create policies and procedures, and we maybe have a team that spent a lot of time doing that and put a lot of effort in, and then we forget that we're not always the ones in direct contact with the employees, and we forget to kind of update our supervisors, foremen, team leads on what that process was and why we developed the policy the way we did. So make sure that you're training those people that have the direct contact with the employees. And then communicate clearly. Communication is a huge piece of doing all of this right. Stay in front of the employee, communicating what's expected, why things are happening. Don't mention, if you're disciplined, don't mention the FMLA or medical situations. Keep those very separate, and to make sure that you don't have the employee tie it back in their heads. So, I hope I didn't talk too fast, but we want to get to your questions. How can we help? First of all, training, and we've all talked about training. So you can see we all feel it's very important. Being proactive, having plans, having people understand what's expected, educating your supervisors on the laws, your policies, is a proactive approach. Dealing with a leave of absence or a problem child, once we're deep into it, is reactive, and it makes it much more challenging. So let's get in front of things, make sure we have great policies, we've trained our staff, they know what to expect, and then make sure we have, I already said the policies thing, but review, update your policies, do that periodically. Things do change. And if you need help with your handbook, I've helped some of you, I can see some of your faces out there, but if you need help, you can always reach out to us at BHS, and we're happy to take a look at it. We have a library of so many HR resources, from sample policies to handbook builders to checklists and forms, anything that you need. We want to be there for you. We can also talk through leave of absence scenarios with you, so if you've got a situation going on and you want to chat about it, I'm not the kind of person that's going to give full advice if I see it getting really ugly. Guess what? I'm going to tell you, go talk to a lawyer. But a lot of times we can help you by sharing experiences that we've had with other clients, or by looking at your policies and seeing what you have in place. We can at least get you most of the way there most of the time, if not the full way. So, and then the other thing that we're committed to do at BHS is providing you communications with legislative updates. You all probably saw a lot of emails from us during the Earned Sick Time Act period, that transition when the changes were all happening. We want to stay in front of that so that we can be proactive for you as well. All right, so we want to open it up for questions, and we are ready. So who's first?
We've got microphones for those who would like to speak up. We got one up here. I'll come to you. Hey, you're 2 for 2 asking the first question. I love it.
What prize do I get?
Not a thing.
Okay.
Good job.
One of my questions is, and we've been kind of seeing it, we are trying to be flexible with our employees with the doctor's notes, and so forth. I'm seeing a lot of AI, ChatGPT, fake doctor's notes to what I'm thinking are fake. How are you guys telling us to address those? Because we're seeing a high up pattern on that one.
Yeah, I've started to see that a lot too. I tend to characterize the potentially fraudulent doctor's note into one of two camps. The first one being, it doesn't look like a doctor wrote it because it contains way too much information. The second one is a form that looks like it's just like John, and then John is in a different font than the rest of it. Can't work at all, ever. Those are the two that I see. Remember, obviously, that you have various rights under the statutes that are applicable here to be able to follow up with the physician. I really urge you. I know that feels like a big Rubicon, and I know why. Because at that point in time, it doesn't just become an employee-employee interaction, employer-employee interaction, it becomes one with the physician as well. But it's actually a really flexible right that you have. The ADA standard, you have the second opinion standard under the FMLA. The ADA standard that applies there is, if you need any clarifying information, you can come back and communicate with the doctor. And here's what I recommend and what I do. there is not a requirement under the ADA or any of these laws that we've talked about today about how exactly that documentation needs to come your way. So sometimes when you go back and you're like, can I get some clarification, please? It becomes 0% more clear in any way, and now you've just wasted 2 or 3 days where you didn't know what you were going to do. A recommendation that I have, usually in consultation either with the folks over at BHS or with your lawyer, come up with your own form. Have a form that's pretty straightforward. It's like, what is the nature of the condition that is causing an impairment with the essential job functions? Here's a job description. Which of these essential job functions has been interfered with or there's a limitation with? To the extent that you need an accommodation or a restriction, which restrictions do you think, doc, would be appropriate given the fact that this is the job that they do and you know the details about their medical condition? And the funny part is, if you make it easier for the doctor to do it, usually they'll take that opportunity. Because now all of a sudden they're not, you know that horrible feeling when you need to draft a document, you open up Microsoft Word, and it's just that cavernous white void looking at you with the blinking thing? That's what a medical note looks like, unless you give them a questionnaire that they can fill out by hand. Now, it's very important to remember, they don't need to use it. They can tell you, no, go to hell, I'm going to use my own doctor's form. Sometimes doctors can get that way. Doctors and lawyers don't always get along. But sometimes that can be a reasonable response, and then obviously we would need to deal with that to the extent that it happens. But I'll tell you what, I've been doing this for a while, and it's only happened once or twice ever. 9 times out of 10, that form comes back, and it provides me with, oh, wait, here's a wealth of information about the thing that I actually wanted to know. And, oh, wait, actually, it turns out the employee that couldn't work at all actually can do a whole bunch of stuff. I can give them a light-duty accommodation that's actually a real, honest-to-God light-duty accommodation, not make work. I can get them back to work with various restrictions, or I have an accommodation that can offer them, and then they can just go back and do all of their job immediately. The number of times that's cleared up, I can't even begin to tell you. And what I'd say is, usually I used to tell people, to directly answer your question about the AI component of it, I used to tell people it's when it's very, very vague and it doesn't have enough data. If it also has a bunch of weird data or a bunch of weird information that you have trouble understanding, that's a sufficient reason to go and get clarification for it. It is a right that you have as an employer. Don't be afraid to use it. And the way I do it, I just do it where it's in writing, so it's documented that I've sent them a form. I can say, hey, here's a form you could use, and if you were to fill this out, this would really help us out. We want to get this guy back to work. It's always the key, right? That's one technique that you can do with it. And then another, obviously, is, yeah, you can use your second opinion to the extent that we're dealing with an FMLA leave or something along those lines. Use that right, and use it quickly. Don't dawdle on that. That's another place, too. That is something where I can honestly say, in all of the times, so I've been doing this, 16, 17 years now, I can honestly say all the times that employers have called me with an FMLA question and I've said, maybe you should go get a second opinion. I think maybe 5 have done it ever. And I get why. I understand it's expensive. It feels scary. It makes it feel like they're going to go into a minefield and they don't know. But it's a right that you have and you should exercise it when you need to.
Thank you.
All right, Jennifer Stanton, so far early MVP for questions. Who else we got? I'm going to jump here first.
So we have an employee who every time they get 8 hours of ESTA time, they tell us they're puking and they use it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any guidance would be great.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Anything.
Okay, so ESTA was written by people that hate you and want to torment you for all time. That's not actually true, but it does feel that way. You know about the ESTA requirement that we're talking about here, which is it needs to be the 3 consecutive absences before you're able to seek. Okay, all right, cool. You already know that piece. But here's the other thing, and I will say this comes from the state of Michigan in their documentation. Keep track of the absence pattern. Because a person who is going to be abusing their absences and abusing their ESTA time is going to think it's pretty awesome to do it more often before the 4th of July. And to the extent that you find those patterns, that's a place where you not only need to get your insurer involved, but you also need to make sure that you contact your attorney to talk it through, because you really gotta have the goods. You can't just have a hunch. But yeah, to the extent that you have a pattern that is consistent with fraudulent use of the ESTA time, awesome. Let's go forward and use that. That might be a disciplinary event. That might even be an employee termination that would result at the end of the day. But sometimes you don't even need to go there. Sometimes it's just enough for them to know that you're actually monitoring it. Because what I will say is that We talked about that, the 90%, the 5%, and the 5%. We talked about that 5% who just, they really want you to have a bad day a lot. That 5%, sometimes you can actually impose reasonable boundaries, and some of the people that you thought were 5%ers might not be. That's a place where I get that a lot. I recently had a situation, somewhat similar. We had an employee who, he had a pre-existing condition. It was not work-related. This employee was a shift worker and was eligible to get overtime. Every winter, we had a position for him where he would earn, I want to make sure I'm specific about this, 80 gorillion hours of overtime. And then every spring, he would come back with a doctor's note that really, I compared them, I've held them up next to each other. I'm pretty sure it's literally a stack of photocopied notes that a doctor friend gave him that says, Jack can't work for about 5 months. Okay, cool. Got it, right. Springtime, yep. With the first pitch of Major League Baseball comes Jack's note. So what we ended up doing with that was, well, one, we followed up with the doctor, and we said, hey, can we have him fill out this form? And as soon as we imposed that very small boundary, that very tiny, insignificant boundary, well, all of a sudden you realize, oh, shit, okay, the gravy train is over. And in that case, he gave a doctor's note that gave us the actual restrictions. We accommodated it by providing him a position that would fit all those needs. And I wish I could tell you that, and then everybody got along and it was happily ever after. But the fact of the matter is, in this case, he resigned about 3 weeks later because he wanted to find an employer that would put up with his bullshit, pardon my French. I'm just saying, sometimes those boundaries that we enforce can actually do it. And in a case like that, keep track of the patterns. Make sure, obviously, you're only asking for documentation to substantiate the absences in the instance where you do have the 3 consecutive days. But to the extent that you do have a pattern, yeah, get other resources involved. Maybe this is a place where you need to go to that person and say, maybe intermittent FMLA leave is going to be an issue if this keeps coming up again and again. That might alone scare them. If employees feel like they're falling in a crack where they can abuse you in that area, then what you're going to do is create a 5%er. That's what's going to really happen there.
And I just want to add a little thing that I've seen help some of you is if you blended your earned sick time into a PTO policy, it's a great opportunity to coach with that employee and say, hey, you understand that this is also the time that needs to be available for you to take a vacation. So if you're using all your time and you request a vacation later this year, we reserve the right to tell you no because you've used all of your PTO. So if you have a separate bank, that might be a different response. But if you blended it, and I know a lot of companies did, just help your employees understand that this is your bank to use for everything. And so if you use it up, that's it.
Absolutely. What I should say is that, by the way, if I see some familiar faces, some of you guys have talked with me, you know that the entirety of the time that I've ever been practicing, I recommend moving to unified PTO banks, and that's the reason why. It's because, think about that, think about the incentive, and by the way, I get it. We're back in 1954, we have a bunch of guys coming home from war and working in a factory. Maybe it made sense in that circumstance to keep sick time and vacation time two segregated banks. What are you really doing? What you're really doing, especially if you don't have a policy by which you're able to have employees cash out excess sick time, what you're really doing is you're having a guy sitting around and he's looking at the folks that are abusing the sick time policy and he's like, he is actually getting the use of that. Because I don't get sick very frequently, I'm just screwed. I have a raw deal. It's not an incentive we want to put our employees in. Think about that. Think about how awful that would be. Think about if you took your worst performer and you gave them a super big bonus where they didn't have to come to work, but they still got paid. The other people notice that, and that's a reason that we can do it. And that, by the way, that's a place where the give and the take of ESTA, when ESTA first came out, forget all the rigmarole of the way that it all happened. When we thought that the old ESTA was back before it got amended at the 11th hour, yeah, unfortunately, you had a lot of people telling you, because I think that was the right advice at the time, I think you're going to have to separate out your banks. Well, no, the current amended ESTA enables you to have a unified bank, and that's a damn good reason to do it, in my opinion.
So we have a lot of the safety stuff, right? How do you handle employees in marijuana use? So we have drivers, we have high risk, we have explosive risk, our job goes into every other company in the city, so we have all their safety issues to deal with. You have employees that vape. You don't know what's in the vape. Certain people tell you, this guy, does the funny vape all day. And it's like, how do we control that? Like, you can tell if someone's drunk and send them home. But people that smoke marijuana all day, every day, they don't act high necessarily, but at the same time, they're not the most always, where they need to be doing high-risk work. So
Right.
That's a gray area we got going on. How do you handle that?
We all have that going on, right? Yep. That one's a tough one. I mean, you do want to have a policy that allows you to test for cause and use it. So if you heard someone, somebody says, hey, that's the funny stuff in that vape, first of all, maybe you have a no vaping policy at all, just to kind of stop that. And then, secondly, if you do feel like you have cause based on performance, or I know people don't think that the vapes have a scent, but I can always smell it. I'm like, oh, who's got weed? I'm always doing it. I'm like, oh, it stinks.
Doesn't always. There's some that's got fruity flavors and stuff now.
Yeah,
They're putting,
yeah.
like, flavors in
So if
them.
you feel you have a reason for cause and you can send that person for a test, I mean, you're going to get the employee then that is going to say, well, I wasn't high, that's from 3 weeks ago. But if your test shows a cause, a reasonable suspicion, and a positive test, I think you're in good shape to take some action at that point.
We'll get, I was high last night, I get high when I get home, so, I'm going to be positive. And you're like,
Yep, absolutely.
and it's not like alcohol where you can go, you definitely have that.
Correct.
You did it 15 minutes ago.
No impairment test for THC as of yet, but I think Denise hit on when she said reasonable suspicion. So you need a reasonable suspicion policy, and you need to train on reasonable suspicion. You have to have a checklist. So when you do have that person that you suspect something is going on, you need yourself, your witness, and your checklist, and you are documenting what that reasonable suspicion is.
There's a video on our website that this person did, Andrew did, that's really well done. If you want to have you watch it yourself or have your supervisors watch it, it's about reasonable suspicion and cause, and you're welcome to use it. If you go to our website and you go to the top, I think there's a resources tab, and if you click on that, it's going to go to the page where there's some recordings there.
And one of the things that I saw, and I'm not going to pick on you because I think this is actually a great example. I saw the look that came over your face when we said, hey, you can do reasonable cause suspicion testing. Here's what I'd tell you guys, and I get it, by the way, especially if you're working in a unionized environment. We're gun shy about making determinations. It's not reasonable certainty. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. You have an employee where another employee came to you and said, I think that John is smoking weed in his vape. Depending on what the surrounding and background circumstances are, I'd say we got enough for a drug test. Don't be afraid of that standard. Make sure that it's spelled out. Make sure that your supervisors are trained on it. That's the important part. But I do think that everyone is at least open and amenable, including, to be honest with you, a lot of the unions that I work with. Not that I don't tell them I said anything nice about them, but I have noticed that that's the case. But I will tell you that everyone understands this is a problem. We don't have a weed breathalyzer. There are some companies that will test that will tell you that they have a present sense impairment test for marijuana. There is not very good scientific validity of it as of today. Maybe that will change in 5 years, I don't know. But right now we don't have one. And then the second piece of your question was, well, what do you do when they're like, yeah, but I got high last night, or yeah, I had an edible on the 4th of July and it's July 10th. Because they're right. That could still be in their body. Call your shot ahead of time. What's going to happen with them? And it doesn't have to be a zero tolerance for a test of impairment policy. You can do that, and for safety sensitive, and certainly if you're a DOT, if we're talking about CDL drivers, that's it. And you can do, I mean, that's a place where it's a rare opportunity where I think that the federal government gives us a very effective shield. You can say, too bad, so sad, that's the law, man. Sorry, you're done, because it is in that instance. But you can also have pre-scheduled policies. One of the things that I worked with, I have a particular industry, it's IT people, where everybody is high all the time, I think. We had a policy that we worked with this IT company, and it was called a Gold Star policy, which was if they had reasonable suspicion, they were not eligible to take advantage of it. But to the extent that there was some sort of other drug test that was performed where it created a hit for them, then we would talk with them about it. And to the extent that that employee had no prior attendance issues, so clear criteria where we can't just use our own discretion and allow our faves to continue and the ones that we actually want to get rid of to penalize, we said, all right, everybody gets one strike. Not with reasonable suspicion, not with post-accident, but we had another type of test that we needed to perform on a randomized basis. And yeah, we had guys that were popping positive all the time. And the fact of the matter is, if it hasn't caused any performance problems, you don't have a way to measure the present sense impairment. But why was the employer allowed to do that? Why did I feel like that was a safe thing for them to do? Because they called their shot ahead of time. They told the employees, this is the criteria. And what do most of my employers do? Most of my employers say, we're not going to random anymore, okay? Because we get it, and we don't give a shit what you do on Friday night, frankly. We just don't. We don't care. As long as it doesn't interfere with your ability to do your job, we're not the morality police. We're not looking to do that. But we also let them know the two types of testing we do, every employer should have a reasonable suspicion drug testing policy. That is to say, a drug testing policy that will trigger when you have a reason to believe that that person is impaired, a reason to believe, not certainty, a reason to believe that that person is impaired or doing drugs while they are at work. And then you also have a post-accident policy. Yeah, if you get into a car accident, absolutely every single person that gets into a car accident when they are driving is going to have a breathalyzer and they're going to have a drug test. And then you tell them, by the way, I don't care if you were doing it 3 weeks ago. If in those limited circumstances you pop positive, I'm not going to interrogate the situation anymore. Why is that okay? It's okay because we tell them ahead of time. And we say, hey, that's the risk. Also, we need to tell them that CBD might hit on the test, and we don't know. Because that's another one where, and what I'd say about all this is to say, it is the day where randoms are not appropriate in my opinion, this is my opinion, randoms are not appropriate for anybody that doesn't have a safety sensitive job that isn't mandated to have a random anymore. And the reason for that is that this is the statistic that is best recognized. 22% of you can't pass a drug test right now. If you are anything like the ordinary population, that's true. I don't think anybody's high in this room, but marijuana doesn't act like alcohol in the blood system. Tough. It's the way it goes. And that is the actual statistic. Well, if you're going to do randoms, basically what you said is I want my employee pool of eligible employees to be 22% lower, which means wages need to go up 22% if I was able to remember anything from the 8 a.m. economics class I took as a sophomore. And it also means, additionally to that the only other alternative, the only way you can hide from it is to apply your policies in a completely unequal and haphazard, arbitrary, and capricious way, which is not awesome. But those are tools that you have. Don't be afraid to use them. The leash on reasonable suspicion should not be nearly as long as you're worried it should be.
I'm going to give you a good example of how reasonable suspicion saved me. I had an employee, he was recently promoted. Another employee was upset that that person got the position. An employee took some empty alcohol bottles, put it in the employee's locker. The employee also smelled of alcohol. So I have 2 hits for reasonable suspicion. Follow our policy, document. I drive him, take him in for breathalyzer test. I would have bet my life that he was going to pop. He did the test, came back 0. Like, I was dumbfounded. Upon investigation, it turned out that he was an employee that was an alcoholic. He did not drive. He took the bus, went to the bar. His apartment was next to the bar. He got drunk. He slept. He sweat. His clothes reeked of alcohol. He did not change, came to work the next day. I followed my documentation. I had my proof of reasonable suspicion. That saved me, kept him as an employee, explained all this to the employee. He got it. Everybody went on. We were fine. He continued to excel as an employee. He just had an issue outside of work. But that did save my rear end. Any other questions out there?
Anyone else?
I have a really quick related thing to go off of. That's a great example of when the policy actually works, and then it's actually doing its function, which is trying to figure out whether you have employees that are impaired. One little sub note on that. Here's another thing that sometimes I have my employers do where they make the wrong call about the reasonable suspicion analysis. If your reasonable suspicion is based, not in this instance, this was based on odor and based on physical evidence. If it's based in performance, you have an employee that's forgetful, you have an employee that is irritable, you have an employee that doesn't appear to be listening to instructions, is frequently forgetting things, then you send them in for a drug test because you think that it may be drug related, and what if the drug test comes back clean? Guess what? If you haven't documented those problems, you've lost the ability to deal with, through the ordinary corrective action process, all that stuff that you need to fix. Like, it's not chill. It's like, oh, well, you weren't high, so you could forget whatever you want to whenever you want to. No, we still need you to be able to do your job well. And if it becomes a performance problem, we need to make sure that that's actually documented in the process. So the documentation that you do as part of the reasonable suspicion process does two things. The first thing that it does is it helps you to justify, why did we send you in? Was it reasonable for us to send you in? What are we going to do if it comes back that that you test positive? But it also helps you, in case they don't, to correct what actually was the reason that you sent them in for, because that matters too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. You're not just sitting around waiting to trap people. We're not the police. What we are is we're an organization that wants to make sure that the job gets done, right? So that is a thing that I find a lot of employers sometimes forget, and just remember, be mindful of that as well.
All right, with that, folks, we are going to wrap up for today. We'd like to thank, on behalf of BHS, we would like to thank you guys so much for coming out and being a part of our event. We are very, very grateful to our presenters, the team from Cooper People Group, Paradigm Safety, Hen Lesbrandts, absolutely phenomenal presentations today. Really showed their expertise in their industries and how important it is to be surrounded by a great team. The best insurance programs are all reactionary to risk, right? In today's symposium, it was about how we can become proactive to manage risks that we face in our daily businesses. We hope you walk away with a few tools for that today, but we also hope you realize this is a continuous journey that you have to continue to invest in with collaboration from team members internally, but also externally. We're here to support you at BHS. We've brought 3 great partners in front of you today with Cooper People Group, Paradigm Safety, and Hen Lesbrandts that can also assist you. You see the survey up on the screens. If you guys could do us a favor and complete that before you leave, because you likely won't do it after you leave, that'd be phenomenal. We'd love your feedback so that we can continue to make these events great. Thanks to the GOE Center staff for helping to support us and organizing a great event for us today. And we hope you all have safe travels back to your businesses and have a phenomenal week. And go Blue.